Seid gegrüßt to a new episode of Binge Listening. The regular viewers of my channel are asking themselves, warum spricht der jetzt auf einmal Englisch? I'm a German YouTuber and I'm always talking about music, about progressive rock or pop rock, sometimes about heavy metal. This time I make a video in English because today the topic is Arthur Brown. I have listened to all the Arthur Brown albums out there, and actually there is no video discussing his whole discography. Most of the time it's just about the debut album, but nobody talks about the Kingdom Come stuff and his solo stuff and then the return of the crazy world. So I want to be the first one on YouTube to make a proper video about Arthur Brown's discography. Yeah, Arthur Brown, born in 1942, is a very special musician. I have listened to 17 albums in the recent weeks, months, and I review them all, beginning with his debut album, The Crazy World of Arthur Brown. Yes, this was an incredible band consisting of Arthur Brown himself on lead vocals, Vincent Crane on the Hammond organ and piano, and the orchestral arrangements, Nick Greenwood on the bass guitar, and Draken Feeker on the drums. What should I say about this particular album? Holy shit, this is probably one of the best albums I have ever heard. Like, I have listened to this album for the first time like 3 weeks ago, and now it's one of the most listened albums by myself. It's incredible. Mostly the first half, because of this whole Fire Suite, like it's a very early concept album, or should I say a half concept album, because the second half of the album is just songs that are not related to each other. Wow, the sound is incredible. You have to think it's 1968. There wasn't anything like this. Like, it's about a guy coming into hell, and this sounds like someone is going to hell. Like the organ, this, with this very aggressive sound, is just an incredible sounding organ. And Arthur Brown, of course, with his flamboyant presence, with his very special screams, is just wow, it's just awesome. My favorite songs are just the 5 first songs: Nightmare, Fire Poem, Fire, Coming By, and Time Confusion. And Fire was his great hit. Like, that's probably the only song he's remembered for, unfortunately, because he will have a couple of more great songs, and it changed like the world. Arthur Brown is probably the most influential one-hit wonder of all time. Like, everything is inspired by him. Everything with theater in the music, and everything like altering their faces. Like, Arthur Brown was the first one painting his face or wearing a mask, and everything after him, like Alice Cooper, Kiss, Ozzy Osbourne, and so on, is inspired by Arthur Brown and his masks and face painting. And that's the birth of shock rock and a bit of a heavy metal influence. It's incredible. And His vocal style is also very influential, like Ian Gillan. Ian Gillan of Deep Purple was very inspired by his vocal screaming. It's it's just one of the most incredible albums I have ever heard. And the second side is also very great. There are two cover songs. I Put a Spell on You by Screaming Jay Hawkins is incredible. And even better, I've Got Money by James Brown. Yes, Brown sings another Brown. I I just have to say this is one of the best albums I ever heard. Like potentially landing in my top 3 of favorite albums of all time. Incredible. That's a 10 out of 10. Yeah, after that, the crazy world of Arthur Brown dissolved because of changing lineups. Actually, Carl Palmer of Emerson, Lake and Palmer was later the drummer of the band, and then Carl Palmer and Vincent Crane left the band to found Atomic Rooster. Arthur Brown just dissolved the crazy world of Arthur Brown and then tried to get in some other bands. He founded Strangelands with what they didn't do anything. Then Rustic Hinge didn't also last very long. And then he founded Kingdom Come. Kingdom Come, a yeah, kind of normal 70s prog rock band, and they released 3 albums. First one is in 1971, Galactic Zoo Dossier. The band consists of Arthur Brown himself on lead vocals, Andy Darby on the guitar, Desmond Fisher on the bass guitar, Julian Brown on the synthesizers, Michael Harris on the organ, and Martin Steer on the drums. And this particular album is very interesting. It is a bit less insane than the first album. It's like really normal progressive rock, like how it's been in the 70s. It fits very well like into other bands like Van de Graaff Generator or King Crimson, but it's still very great. The songwriting is incredible. Like my favorite songs were The Internal Messenger, Metal Monsters, Sunrise, Medley, Creation, Gypsy Escape, and No Time. Like almost everything on this album was incredible. That's a 10 out of 10. Then in 1972 came their self-titled album, Kingdom Come. Now, Julian Brown has left the band, and Desmond Fisher left the band and got replaced by Phil Schutt on the bass. And it's just like the album before, like typical prog rock. I don't have anything special to say. It's perhaps a bit weaker, but like very close here. My favorite songs were Water, City Melody, The Experiment, and The Hymn. That's still a 10 out of 10. And in 1973 there was Journey. And this album is very special. First, Michael Harris left the band and was replaced by Victor Perino or something. And the drummer left the band and was not replaced. He was replaced by a drum machine. In 1973. This means this album is one of the first albums with an entire drum machine in it. That's something in the 80s happened a lot. Like Steve Hackett or Jethro Tull and Focus did it once, but that was in the 80s. But in 1973, this was a real novelty. And yes, it was also a very experimental album. Like very interesting. The drum machine did very crazy things, and the synthesizers. The synthesizers are very impressive. It is really a super odd, abgespaced album. Really incredible. My favorite songs were Time Captives, Gypsy, and Superficial. This is way ahead of this time. Like, it also could have been for 1983 or something. Very incredible. This album gets a 10 out of 10. Yeah, after this album, Kingdom Come dissolved, and then Arthur Brown did solo. And his first really solo album came out in 1975, and it is called Dance. Yes, it is. Yeah, Arthur Brown wanted to be normal with his album, but still kind of experimental. He's going a few steps back with his very interesting persona, and it's gonna be more accessible, this album. And yeah, there are something interesting things like the synthesizers, but yeah, it's I want to hear Arthur Brown because of being insane. But still, there are great songs like Helen with the Sun or Take a Chance. It is still a 7 out of 10, really. In 1977, he released Chisholm in My Bosom, and it's just a non interesting album. It's very late 70s pop music and nothing really Arthur Brown ish stuff. I don't know what he wanted to be with this album. Some kind of disco or something? It's just strange in a bad way. And there was nothing really interesting except for the other cover of I Put a Spell on You. Yes, he covered this song 2 times. And there's also a 20-minute title track, but it's also not interesting. That's just a 2 out of 10. In 1979, he released Faster Than the Speed of Light, featuring Vincent Crane, the keyboarder of his first album. And yeah, Vincent is just giving new creative energy to Mr. Brown, because this album is really weird again. Musically, not that crazy, but still, you notice it's Arthur Brown. You notice there is this like theatrical and flamboyant existence of this role he's playing, and that's just incredible. And the music is just really nice. My favorite songs were Nothing We Can Do, No, Come and Join the Fun, and the title track. Yeah, this album gets an 8 out of 10. Then there were the 80s, and Mr. Brown released 2 albums in 1982. The first one being Requiem, and it's a really experimental album again with these synthesizers. Wow, these synthesizers are very interesting. It's kind of new wavy, but very experimental new wave. At some instances, Brown reminded me of David Bowie and Kraftwerk, and this album was a very big surprise for me, because I didn't think that he made such a good album in the 80s. Very interesting experience. My favorite songs were Animal People, Gabriel, Requiem, and Mechanical Messiah. This album gets 9 out of 10. And in the same year, Speak No Tech was released, and it's also a very synthesizer driven album, but with the lesser interesting songs. Like both could have been a double album. The more interesting songs were on Requiem, but still is a very interesting experience. My favorite songs are King of England and Speaking No Tech. Still a 7 out of 10. Nice album. In 1988, he released Black, Brown, and Blue together with Jimmy Carl Black from the Mothers of Invention. And I don't review this album because it's a covers album, and I don't care for covers albums. I never did a covers album in my videos. I just mention them, but then, yeah, skip them. In the same year, in 1988, Strange Lands was released. And this album is very interesting. It was recorded in 1969 because this was the band Arthur Brown was trying to get along after dissolving the crazy world of Arthur Brown. And yeah, he completed it in 1988. He released it in 1988. And it is really weird. Like, sometimes it's even a bit weirder than the debut. And there is this energy, this really special energy from the 60s again. Wow, this is very incredible. This album is like for avant-garde fans, the perfect thing. My favorite songs were The Lord Doesn't Want You, The City, and Hold on Cosmos. It's also a concept album, kind of, but I didn't get much information on the internet about this album. And a very interesting recommendation on later versions of the album, he released some replicas from the Rustic Hinge era, the band after Strangelands and before Kingdom Come. And this is very interesting because Rustic Hinge was very inspired by none other than Captain Beefheart, and it sounds very much like a Captain Beefheart album. That is very interesting, these bonus tracks of the Rustic Hinge replicas. This album, 100% a 10 out of 10. Incredible. Yeah, then he didn't release anything in the 90s. He did something with other musicians. He was featured on Vincent Crane album called Taro Rota. And wow, he did very interesting things over the time. Like he was starred in a movie by The Who in the 70s. He moved to Burundi for a half year and made their music. And he was like a part of the Alan Parsons project for a short time. He was touring with Hawkwind, and he's popping out every here and there, and that's very interesting. And then in the 2000s he came back. He reinvented the crazy world of Arthur Brown, and in the year 2000 he released Tantric Lover. And this album is not really that weird. It really surprised me. And it's mostly an acoustic album with really impressive percussion. Perhaps he was inspired by moving to Burundi for a half year in the 70s. I love this album for being that different than the others. And he didn't release an album like this ever again. And that's really interesting. That's a real interesting experience. My favorite songs are Tantric Lover, The Bridge, Swimfish, Gabriel, and Heartaches. This album gets 9 out of 10. Yeah, in 2003 he released The Vampire Suite, and it's just not very spectacular. It's again a kind of concept album. There were two interesting songs, Vampire Club and Vampire Love. but no, it's still better than Chisholm in My Bosom, but yeah, 5 out of 10. In 2007, he released The Voice of Love, and it's not released by the crazy world of Arthur Brown, it's released by the amazing world of Arthur Brown. Yeah, and this album is amazing. Um, like Tantric Lover, this album is like something totally different. It's very folky. Arthur Brown himself playing a lot of guitar, and this album is not really crazy. It's mostly acoustic again, but like less with the percussion and more with the string instruments. More guitar, more strings, and wow, that's really interesting. Again, very unique and still a good album. My favorite songs were Love is the Spirit and Devil's Grip. This album gets an 8 out of 10. In 2014, he released Zim Zam Zim, and it's getting weird again. Damn, that's weird. Really creative. Like, there was a 7-year gap between Voice of Love and Zim Zam Zim. There was like a lot of time for Mr. Brown to come up with very new, fresh ideas, and this is just very nice. Not that crazy like the first album, nothing is gonna be like the first album for real, but very nice album. My favorite songs were Zim Zam Zim, The Unknown, and Muscle of Love. This is getting a 9 out of 10. And in 2019, he released Gypsy Voodoo. Yeah. It has a very strong guitar tone. Like, sometimes it feels very hard rocking. And this makes this album unique again. That's really great that he didn't want to make 2 times the same thing in a row. Always doing something new and fresh. That is nice, because that's helping the brain to not go into a comfort zone, but instead go out and make something new and interesting and getting new impressions in your brain. And that's very important, especially if you're getting old, because Arthur Brown was like 77 at this point, and you have to be making something new if you don't want to getting down with your brain, because it's not easy staying healthy with the brain when getting old, because yeah, if you don't refresh your brain every now and then, when you're getting old, you can get Alzheimer's disease, and that's not good. That's really bad. Yes, unique sound. There are also new versions of Fire and the Fire Poem, and they are really interesting because they're not just replays of the same song, because they are very new interpreted sorry new interpretations of the songs with really interesting sound, and it's just nice. And yeah, the songs are great. My favorite songs were Gypsy Voodoo, Footsteps in the Desert, and The Mirror. This album gets an 8 out of 10. In 2022, he released Long Wrong Road. It was released at his 80th birthday. And this album feels like very early Arthur Brown. This is like the album that gets most of the energy of the late 60s, early 70s. Really crazy album. it feels like it's a concept album. I don't know if it is a concept album, but it feels like this. Um, the only thing holding it a bit back is Arthur's voice, because, of course, with 80, you can't sing like you are in your 20s. That is not possible. Even even for Mr. Brown, it was not possible. He's still very strong, yes, but that's a bit holding him back. But the, it's still very great. My favorite songs were Gas Tanks, Going Down, I Like Games, and Long Long Road. Wow, really great album. This gets a 9 out of 10. And in the same year, he released Monsters Ball. And it's a album for the Halloween season, because Arthur Brown is kind of being in the horror genre, despite not really being that horror, but shocking in a kind of way. Um, yeah, because he has this shock rock influence, and this is very horror themed, but nothing really special. Most of the songs are about vampires and zombies and ghosts and ghouls and the devil. Very cliche horror, and it's sometimes a bit cheesy. There are some cover songs like Lucifer Sam by Pink Floyd and Can't Evil 9 by Emerson, Lake and Palmer, which are the best songs on the album, and a new version of Fire. That's the fourth version of Fire. Like the first one from 1968, a single from 2013, from 2019 from the Gypsy Voodoo album, and now 2022 from the Monsters Ball album. And he has very interesting features. And he's probably doing the recordings from very few years ago, because um, there are musicians on this album that are dead for a couple of years, like Roy Albrighton from Nectar is on this album, but he died already in 2016. And yeah, there are other interesting features on this album, like Jordan Rudess from Dream Theater or Ian Pace from Deep Purple. Yes, it's very big. Like, it tries to be a very big album, but it's just okay. It's a very cheesy Halloween season album. This gets a 6 out of 10. Yeah, and that was it. That was it with the Arthur Brown discography. Sorry for my very interesting English. Yeah, I'm from Germany. This was an interesting discography, incredible albums. It's really a pity that he's not known for the other albums. Like, the Kingdom Come stuff should have been way more famous. Like, this, he's like one of the unsung heroes also from the 70s, because he was so ahead of his time in the 60s and the 70s. And this album here, The Crazy World of Arthur Brown, is just one of the most interesting things I have ever heard. Yes, this was my binge listening episode to Arthur Brown. Next time again in German. Until next time.